Janet Yellen has announced, at least, that there's not going to be the most easiest and obvious solution to this farce that is the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling, raising the debt ceiling is really something that should just be completely pro forma. The Congress has already authorized the spending and appropriated the money. And this is just basically saying now we have to cover our bill. But this remains for a bunch of different reasons, almost an annual thing, particularly when the Republicans control the House and there's a Democratic president. Doesn't work that way when there's a Republican president and Democrats don't obviously hold it up when there's a Democratic president. What is going to come out of this, undoubtedly, is going to be some type of deal, because the administration doesn't seem to be giving itself any other option, where they will do the hard job of looking at so-called entitlements. And what they're talking about are the two social insurance programs we have, the wildly popular social insurance programs of Social Security and Medicare. And we're already starting to see a new Simpson-Bowles committee floated around. We talked a little bit about that, I think, the other day with Perrine, what the last committee was. It was a joke. And the joke is on you. They want to cut Social Security. There's two things that can happen right now with Social Security. Just by, for all intents and purposes, let's say that the Social Security Trust Fund runs out of money in 2033. It can change. It can be 2034. It can be 2031. But this is basically a rainy day fund, an excess amount of fund that was developed really back in 1982, I think it was, during the Reagan administration, when Alan Greenspan and the Reagan administration and the Democrats realized that there was going to be a demographic bulge, the baby boomers. And how are we going to pay them out? And so they raised the taxes. They developed this essentially, excess fund for Social Security. That fund is going to run out in 2033. When it does, there will be automatic cuts to Social Security, about 23% cuts across the board in terms of benefits. This can be avoided by simply doing what was the original formulation of Social Security, and that is to raise the cap. Right now, the cap is at $160,000. The first $160,000 you earn is subject to the Social Security tax. If you don't earn that much, everything you earn is subject to the Social Security tax. If you make $200,000, if you make $500,000, if you make $750,000, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million, $10 million, on and on and on, none of that money except for the first $160,000 is subject to Social Security taxes. Your employer doesn't pay the 8%, and you don't pay the 8% essentially to match it.
And given income inequality and how that's ballooned, you can see why that would be a problem.
Right, because there are more people who now, instead of like having 10 people who make $160,000, you have one person who makes $160,000 and then another person who makes $10 million.
Right.
And so only their first $160,000 is captured. That's a little bit of a simplistic way of showing it, but that's the dynamic. And where it used to be about 91%, 90% of all income was touched by that Social Security tax, now only about 81, 82% is. And so to rejigger that and get 90, 91%, you could also do 100%.
Yeah. Eliminate the cap.
Eliminate the cap. End of story. And that tax just gets paid on every dollar. And why wouldn't it be?
And this happened to Medicare, right? In the 90s, the cap was eliminated, or am I getting that right?
What happened with Medicare is that there is an additional sort of like side tax, if you will, on money that goes above the cap.
Gotcha.
So it's not the same payroll tax, but it's another one. And the ACA added a little one too. Here is Joe Manchin. And remember, take this with a grain of salt, because Joe Manchin at the beginning, if you remember, of the Build Back Better saga said, well, I think 3.5 trillion is too little. I think we should be spending $4 trillion. And then after everyone was lulled to sleep, he met with his people and it came out like, we're not going to spend any of that money. So I'm not convinced that we're not seeing this here again. He comes out, the guy you would imagine who's going to be the strongest proponent for cuts to Social Security comes out and says, I'm not for cuts for Social Security, which may just open that door to that new Simpson Bowles. But here he is.
Talk and look at the waste.
Well, let's talk about Social Security and Medicare. As part of these negotiations over the debt ceiling, you are suggesting a new committee to come up with ways to make Medicare and Social Security more financially stable. I want to be clear there. Are you talking about any cuts, benefits?
No cuts to anybody that's receiving their benefits, no adjustments to that. They've earned it. They've paid into it. Take that off.
Pause it. No cuts to anyone receiving their benefits.
Yep.
So a guy like me who's not getting benefits for 5, 10 years, 7 years, maybe, I can get cuts. You can get cuts. So just be clear on what's going on here. He's not saying no cuts. He's saying no cuts to anybody right now.
Cuts, benefits.
No cuts to anybody that's receiving their benefits, no adjustments to that. They've earned it. They've paid into it. Take that off the table. But everyone's using that as a leverage.
Receiving their benefits now or at...
You want to look at everything humanly
Is it now
possible.
or the future?
Well, you have to look at people that basically, where are they in their working age? What's going on here? But the bottom line is Social Security and Medicare basically is running out of cash because we stop at a certain level when people pay into FICA.
So you're open to cuts and benefits for future recipients?
I'm open to basically raising the easiest and quickest thing we can do is raise the cap. Everybody says, oh, that's a tax.
Raise the age?
No. Forget the age.
Okay.
At 150, I think it's 154,000, you quit paying. So if you're getting a paycheck, now in West Virginia, in a state like mine, that the median income is much lower than that, they're paying 100% of the tax. In wealthier areas, they're paying a very small percentage of that tax.
Your colleague, Bernie Sanders, tweeted, the last thing we need is another commission to propose cuts to Social Security and Medicare.
I agree with him. Bernie and I agree on that. You don't need a committee to look at cuts, and that's what they're using and weaponizing it. Can't you look and find out in government where you can be more efficient, more basically prudent with the taxpayers' money? And quit wasting it, don't you think? And we all talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. That's an easy thing to do.
Well, can you pause it? Yeah, because this pairs with what he said, what we played on the Thursday show last week, where the entirety of like what this bipartisan commission that he's trying to put together is to look for fraud, which is an infinitesimal amount of the money that he calls waste in that fund. But if he wants to raise the cap, I'll take that 100%.
Yes, but I when I hear this, I hear a guy who's saying it's all on the table except for changing the age. And he's saying that maybe, okay, if you're 55 and you paid into it for the most of your life, then you won't get cuts. But if you're 45, we're going to cut. I mean, he's looking to cut.
That's what he means by efficiency. That's the language he's using.
And he's looking to cut. So, this, the committee, if they set up a committee like this, it's going to be all hands on deck to fight this one in the same way that we fought Simpson Bowles, because it's garbage time, real garbage time. And we're going to be talking later in the week about the change in the chief of staff, and that is not encouraging either. This guy, a corporate clown.